Markets Now is brought to you by the 5-year anniversary of Brevant Seeds. Here's to 5 years of not just winning, but collecting one game-changing W after another. See all of our wins at Brevant.com/wins.
Welcome to Markets Now. I'm Michelle Roque with Jim McCormick of agmarket.net here at the NAFB convention in Kansas City. So we had a lower day in everything but the hog market. And Jim, let's start off talking about soybeans. Down 3 days in a row here, even though we've had confirmed sales to China all 3 days, including 17 million bushels today. What is this? Buy the rumor, sell the fact, profit taking what?
I think it's definitely a little bit of buy the rumor, sell the fact. Remember, we rallied on the anticipation of a deal being made, a framework with Scott Bessent. We gapped higher coming out of that weekend when he announced it. Then we rallied again when President Trump said, hey, they're going to buy 12 million metric tons. And then we saw kind of a flurry of buying when people said, oh, wow, China actually did follow through, because there was a little bit of question, would they? But now, here we are, 3 days later, we've seen a little bit of market correct a little bit. Part of it is maybe a little bit of disappointment. Remember, President Trump said they're going to buy 12 million metric tons by the end of the year. They've bought about 1.5 million, 1.7 million metric tons. I've heard they could have bought maybe 2.5 max so far. That's a far cry from the 12 million. So maybe that's disappointing the market bull a little bit, and they're just booking profits. Remember, Michelle, it is the end of the month coming up next week. It's hard to believe it's Thanksgiving. It's a shortened trade week, so maybe that's also spurring a little bit of profit taking.
Okay, so how much business from China are we going to have to get on the books before we see that mentality or psychology shift back?
I think you got to see the more commitment, like they're actually going to fulfill this 12 million metric tons, because if they don't, even though that 12 million is half of what we thought they were going to buy at the beginning of the year per se, it would still be very bearish for the balance sheet, and that carryout, which was cut by 10 million in this last WASDE report, will start creeping back up. And that could become a real big problem if Brazil's crop is as big as it looks like it could be. This crop right now, it was very dry getting planted, but they're getting the rains they need, and they have the potential of trendline yields that they could really bury the world in beans.
So Trump said this week, we may not see the 12 million metric tons by the end of the year. It might be by spring. Is that true or not?
Good question. I mean, because here's the thing. China's buying beans, but they're buying, it's a political buy is what I'm going to refer to it. This is Kafka buying. This is the Chinese government, in essence, buying U.S. beans as a way to essentially fulfill the trade agreement. Okay? Now, what I'm looking at right now is, remember, we still don't have a deal with the Chinese. Last weekend, Secretary Bessent said that they hoped to have a deal intact by Thanksgiving.
Nothing has been signed
Nothing's
yet.
said. But this is, one thing I'm going to argue, is this a China way to put a little bit of pressure on the administration? Because now that they've essentially said, hey, we're fulfilling the portion of our end of the deal, we're buying your beans, Mr. President, like you ask, is this putting pressure on the Trump administration to sign that deal? And I'm going to be very cautious, because we've seen many times where deals with China get so close to the finish line and go backwards. That could happen. And maybe that's spooking the bean market a little bit, because it's China. Until it's done, it's done. And even when it's done, it may not be done.
That's right. And could they be dragging their feet waiting for the Supreme Court ruling on the IEEPA tariffs?
They could be doing that too. But I think, like I said, this more feels like a political deal. They don't need our beans. If they want to buy beans value, Michelle, they'll buy Brazilian beans. Brazil's selling beans $1 cheaper than us. So this buy is more to say, hey, Mr. President, we are fulfilling our end of this trade agreement. Are you going to fulfill your end, whatever he pledged to the Chinese? And we'll see. Like I said, Scott Bessent said they hoped the deal was going to be done. But you remember, when they announced the deal, they made it sound like it was a done deal. And now they're kind of saying, well, maybe it wasn't completely done. We'll see.
We also had a story that came out on yesterday, I would say, that EPA might kick the can down the road on the half RIN consideration for imports of biofuels and feedstock. That also is hurting the market, isn't it?
It's definitely hurting it. When that news story came out, it broke the market really hard on the bean oil. Michelle, is that part of the negotiation tactic? Maybe, because remember, what's the feedstock we're talking about?
Used cooking oil.
You got it. So was this announcement more of a trial balloon, as maybe the used cooking oil is getting part of the trade negotiations that we're trying to finalize by next week? I don't have an answer, but it seems very strange to me that out of the blue, an unnamed source from the White House is saying they're going to reverse policy against the policy, let's be honest, was, the reversal of it would be very negative to the Trump base, which is the American farmer.
Where do we get the next area of support here in the beans? Have we done any technical damage?
We're getting close to last week's lows. I think that is going to be very, very critical right now. You take that out, or the low made, essentially they had an explosive move higher when China actually bought the beans. That would be very technically weak. Remember, there's a massive gap on all these charts. It wouldn't be a surprise to see it go down and fill that gap, especially if the trade gets the sense that China is not fulfilling all its pledges.
That biofuels news did not help the corn market either, but is corn still just following beans down?
I think corn is following beans down. I mean, here's the fact with corn. All summer long, the old crop corn carryout we thought was 1.3 billion. After quarterly grain stock revision, it came in right about 1.5 billion. If you remember, spot corn has not been over 440 all summer long, with a 1.5 carryout in essence. We're now staring a 2.1 carryout in. I know what a lot of people are going to say, Michelle, but that crop's way too big. There's no way it's a 186. I'm going to say fine. I'm in that camp, but if it does come down 3 or 4 bushels, that feed number, which is 600 million higher than year on year with the same amount of animals, there's no way. So what the government's going to do, best case, worst case, however you want to look at it, they're going to lower the yield, they're going to lower the feed demand, going to keep the carryout at 2 billion. And if you get a 2 billion plus carryout, there's just no reason for corn to get much over 440, 450, and that's just going to keep us in this range potentially all the way through the holidays.
Yeah, corn got back below the 200-day moving average, but where's the next support area there? Because we've been, in a 15-cent range?
It's about 15 cents. I think you get that March contract, I believe, is somewhere around that 415, 419. There is a 100-day moving average. That is the uptrend line. And that's kind of the middle of the range we've been in. I mean, if you look at the corn market from essentially spot month from mid-June all the way to now, I mean, they buy corn down near 420 or lower. They sell corn when it gets up near 440. And that just seems to be economic value for where we are at the moment.
Wheat market also lower, despite the fact that we saw a little confirmation of China business there too, right?
Wheat's a little bit lower there. Part of that might have been the story out of Ukraine saying they are going to be able to push a lot of wheat out on the world market. We're not overly competitively priced on the world market for wheat. Keep an eye on the US dollar. That is going to have a huge impact. Are they going to lower interest rates? Are they not going to lower interest rates? If they start to they keep lowering interest rates, that usually is, when you lower the interest rates, you don't see people wanting US dollars. When they start raising interest rates, that brings the dollars into the market. So that'll have an impact on wheat.
A little bit of talk of a peace agreement between Ukraine and Russia. Is that also been pressuring the market? And I mean, we don't have a lot of war premium in wheat anyways, do we? No,
we don't, but it may be putting a little bit of pressure in the market because, that conflict has definitely been ratcheting up. They've been, they've been hitting each other pretty hard. I would argue probably you're going to see some of the shipping costs, the insurance costs is going to go up when they kind of get into more conflict. If you can take that conflict out, that opens up that corridor for wheat and corn, and we got to compete with that.
More new lows for the move in the cattle market today. Obviously, we've had lower cash, but the funds are liquidating. How much lower do we have to go here?
That's the $1 million question right now. I mean, I'm going to argue. I know the cattle market had one heck of a run. I know the cattle producers want to hear it probably overshot its skis, to be quite honest. Just like when corn goes to $8, it's unsustainable. The cattle market was unsustainable there. It was just a lot of spec money in it. We're in the process of washing that money out. I do believe we will get a rebound back because the fact of the matter is nothing's changed. We still have an incredibly tight supply of cattle. Yes, we may bring some beef in from Argentina. It is not a game changer. You actually have some people out there in the meat industry saying we're going to pay over $10 a pound for hamburger as we move in latter part of 2026. So that shows you even the meat industry is trying to brace the consumer. This is not going to end soon. I mean, the reality is this, folks. It took multiple years to get into this crisis. It's going to take multiple years to get out of it. That's just how the cattle cycle works.
Okay. The only caveat to that is we have record weights.
Yes.
That's going to make up a little bit of that deficit, right?
Yeah, we'll make up some of it. I mean, and then something else we got to keep an eye on is what's going on in Mexico. Mexico doesn't feed the cattle near as heavy as we do. So if you would open that border up, I mean, theoretically, they're killing them there, bringing the beef in. But if you're feeding them heavier here in the U.S. than they do in Mexico, from what I understand, that's in general what happens. That will bring more protein in. And remember, the market right now, the reason why it's going up here, it is trying to do two things. It's trying to bring supply to market via expand the herd or even import it, which we don't want the competition, but that's what it is. Or it's just trying to tell people, buy a different product.
Gotcha.
Go cheaper. That is the goal of the market right now. And, you're going to reset, but then when the market resets down, then it brings the demand back in and will bring us back up.
Speaking of another protein, hogs up here for a second day. Is this just short covering?
I think it's short covering, plain and simple, at this point in time. Maybe a little bit unwinding the cattle-hog spread as well.
Yeah, because the fundamentals still are not very good right now for the hogs, are they?
Still an oversupply. Like I said, the one good thing right now, I would say for protein demand, the fact of the matter is that protein is a very big part of the American diet right now. The fact of the matter is, I tell a lot of people that, those GLP-1 diet shots that a lot of people are taking, what do they tell them to do? You got to eat a lot of protein to offset that shot. So that, it doesn't seem like that's going away. President Trump's trying to get those shots even cheaper. So that's a good sign for the protein demand, I think, in the long run.
All right. Great to see you, as always.
Thank
Jim McCormick with agmarket.net. That is Market Snap.
You were right.
You were right.
You were right.
Well, you were right. When you choose your seed brand, there's winning, and then there's...
You were right. Should have gone with Brevant seeds.
When you choose Brevant seeds, you don't just win. You get to be right. Don't just win. Win. Talk with your retailer or visit Brevant.com/win to get started.